All right, welcome back to the channel. This is another video on my software development projects. This time around, I'm doing some data analysis using Pandas, Altair, and this Datadotworld library. So here, let me move this. Here we have my question. So I was originally starting out thinking, is there any correlation between the college graduation rates in the United States and mental health diagnosis? This says suicide rates, but I decided to not stick to that. It was hard to find data. So I found some data about college grad rates using Pandas to read the CSV file, importing all the stuff. And I'm using Altair to create a chart. And this one's for the total, so male and female. I do similar processes for, this one's for females, and then green is for just males. And I combine all the charts into this. So we have the male, the total, and the female, and it's an interactive chart. So if we click on it, we can move it around, we can zoom in. And in all of history, most of the time, males have been higher, but as of recently, they've been passed by female graduation rates, which is cool. We moved down, and then I found some mental health data on this website. All these links for the data are at the beginning of this project. But so we have this data, and then I had used Pandas a little bit before, and so I wanted to learn some SQL. And so instead of doing a Pandas, like loading it in as a CSV or a JSON, I just did some SQL queries to get this data. So this one, I'm trying to get the total mental health data in the United States and sort it descending order. So highest to least. And this is the chart that it returns. They're all looking pretty similar, and that'll come up in the chart that it makes. So I put this into a chart as well, and we can see since 1990, haven't had much of a change in terms of mental health diagnosis. So I put this on top of the total chart for the other one, and I guess we answered our question in the sense that there's no correlation between graduation rates of college students as well as percentage of US population that's been diagnosed with a mental health condition. In fact, I was pretty surprised that the mental health diagnosis stayed so consistent over the last, almost 30 years. But so then I decided change course a little bit and ask a different question, which would be, from the mental health data, what does that look like by country? Like, which country has the worst depression as in percent of population? And then a couple other ones too, like eating disorder or anxiety or depression. So I start again SQL querying just out the bipolar data from this. Or actually, this is the total, an average of each of them. And then I'm taking this and just taking the bipolar data to graph on the y-axis. So we can see here the chart that results. This is sorting the color by the country's code. So we have New Zealand in this one that has the most bipolar diagnoses, as in percent of population. So the metric that it's using, the percent of population, can be a little skewed depending on the country, just because if a country has a really, really small population, but they have a really high percentage of mental health, like that's still a lot less people than in another country that has a greater population. So a lot of these charts, the United States will not even show up, just because the population of the United States is so much greater than a lot of these countries, that then the proportion isn't as high. So I think it's still a relatively good all-around metric, just because I think it gives a good picture of the overall health of a nation. So then we move on here. We have eating disorders. This one's Australia. And we can see that all the rest are relatively close to each other. Move down to anxiety, again, New Zealand, followed by Norway. And then we move down a little further for the depression data. And we have Greenland, followed by Morocco. All this data was taken from a couple different websites. So the guy that I found it on Datadotworld, he had taken it from a world database website, and it was all gathered from World Health Organization as well as national surveys that were taken. So there is a proportion of error in the sense that it can only be in the World Health Organization, it can only be people that are diagnosed. And there's a lot of people out there that may have a mental illness and haven't been diagnosed. And so that's where kind of like the National Health Survey data kind of comes in, because that's just public survey information of people who may not have been diagnosed, but still identify as having a mental health problem. So that's my project for this last week. It was really helpful learning SQL. I haven't done a lot of this. Also, the Pandas, while the queries were relatively simple, just filtering data for year total or whatnot from this data set, it was still helpful to learn, and learning Altair a little bit better too to graph all of these was pretty exciting. So yeah, make sure like, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.